Hello and welcome to Grub Farm. Today I'm going to be making a willow tea and I'll be using it as a growth hormone for some blackcurrant cuttings. So I'm going to make a tea, I'm going to soak the blackcurrant cuttings in the tea and then I'm going to plant them. I'm a little bit restricted in my movement today. 13 days ago I was doing some exercise on the bike, I was cycling. I clipped a wheel in front of me. My bike slid sideways, I was high-sided off the bike. I landed on my shoulder. I broke the end of my clavicle and drove it 2 inches into my shoulder. So quite unpleasant. This part of my shoulder is meant to be connected to that part of my shoulder. So initially it looked like I might require surgery, a plate to realign it. But since the accident I've been stretching out my shoulder and the overlap has now been reduced to about 2 centimeters. So in another few days I'll go back for a final x-ray and fingers crossed that it'll be able to heal naturally. So behind me I have a willow tree. I'm just going to cut some of growth that happened over the last year, so it should be high in indolebutyric and salicylic acid. To make the willow tea, I'm going to take some green cuttings off this grey willow. I'm going to chop it up really fine. I'm going to boil some water. I'm going to use some water from the lock so it has no chlorine, etc. in it. I'm going to boil up that water, add the cuttings from the willow tree to it, let it steep overnight. I will then take the blackcurrant cuttings, soak them in that willow tea for 24 hours and then I'm going to plant them. Just looking for green growth. I'm just going to gather up a couple of handfuls of willow. That'll be enough to make a tea. So I'm just going to boil up the water from the lock. I'm now going to cut up the willow. Add the water and let it steep now overnight. I'm going to leave the blackcurrant cuttings in a dark shed for 48 hours before I plant them. The cuttings have been allowed to soak now for 48 hours. They look happy, so it's time to get them planted. Now if you're wondering, does it hurt when you break your clavicle and drive it about 2 inches into your shoulder? Yeah, it does. It's quite an unpleasant experience, don't recommend it. Just like to say a big thank you to Peter Keller for giving me these blackcurrant cuttings. So he's one of the members of the Irish Nut Growers Group and I hope to be able to return the favour at some point in the future. So if you are in Ireland and you have some soft fruit trees or bushes growing in your garden, feel free to send me some cuttings. I want a very diverse range of berry bushes growing between the trees. So I'm thinking about gooseberry, blackberry, blackcurrant, raspberries, and the list goes on. So it grows in Ireland and you can eat it. I want to try and establish it in the orchard. So one of the reasons I'm doing all this is I want to get, I have a lot of concerns over establishing a monoculture. So I want biodiversity. I want different types of plants to try and reduce threat from pest and disease, and also to surface and mobilize minerals. You have some plants that fix nitrogen, you have other plants that accumulate nitrogen, potassium, phosphates, etc. So yeah, I want to have a source of nutrients for the hazelnut trees. The primary crop that I'm focusing on is hazelnut, and if everything goes well, I may have the opportunity to make some money then from the soft fruit as well. So I'm thinking about, either pick your own or harvest it and process it in some way. So I have a lot of ideas in my head about how it might play out, but ultimately I want to get a good hazelnut yield, which is why I'm trying to establish this permaculture orchard. The scaffolding branches coming off the hazelnut trees they should be above 65 centimeters. So I've topped the trees at about 85. I'm expecting the scaffolding branches to establish within about 20 centimeters from the top of the trees. So if you come off at a 30-degree angle, so the scaffolding branches should grow at a 30-degree angle to the horizontal. So that means halfway between the trees, which is 1.75 meters, I should have 1.6 to 1.7 meters of clearance. So most of the bushes are quite comfortable growing in the 1.2 to 1.5 meter range of clearance. So that's why I went for the centre, to give them plenty of room to grow and to reduce light competition. So all I'm going to do now is punch a hole about half the length of the blackcurrant cuttings and pop them in, close it over. If my shoulder wasn't busted, I would put down a piece of cardboard, I would put some compost on top of it and try to reduce weed competition, but I'm going to have to come back to that in the summer because I don't have enough mobility to do that now. So I'm just going to bury this about 3-4 inches in the ground. I'm just pushing it down until I can feel earth at the bottom. Just going to press it in. So I am going to come back to this in the summertime. I am going to put some cardboard around it and put some compost on it. And ultimately where I want to get to is to have a continuous run of plants with a mulch between the three. So one long continuous run of a mulched area with lots of different plants growing. So that's it, the blackcurrant are in the ground. So in total there was about 26, 27 cuttings. So a massive thank you to Peter Keller for sending me those cuttings, much appreciated. So what I have to do next is I'll come back in a week or two, as soon as I'm feeling a bit more mobile, and I'll put down some wood chip around those blackcurrants that were in the ground. Anyway, until then, good luck!